The Moonlit Mirage motel sat like a forgotten dream on the side of Route 66, its neon sign stuttering in the dark, a crooked crescent moon glowing green and gold against the endless desert sky. The air was thick with the scent of creosote and dust, stirred by a restless wind that carried whispers of stories long buried. I stood in the doorway of room 9, my cigarette trailing a thin wisp of smoke, its glow a faint echo of the stars above. A truck roared past on the highway, its taillights fading into the night, leaving behind a low hum that settled into my bones. I exhaled, watching the smoke twist and vanish, like every hope I'd ever let myself hold. My name's June. I'm telling you this because some nights are like scars, you don't choose them, but they mark you forever. That night was one of those. It was late August, the kind of heat that lingers like a bruise, pressing against your skin even after the sun's gone down. I'd been working this road for 6 years, moving from one neon-lit motel to another, each room a brief shelter for someone else's escape. I was good at it, good at being what they needed, good at keeping my heart locked away where no one could touch it. But that night wasn't about what I was good at. It was about him. I flicked my cigarette to the gravel, crushing it under the toe of my scuffed boots. The motel's office was a dim glow across the lot, where Earl, the night manager, was probably nursing a beer and muttering at the static on his old radio. I adjusted my dress, red, faded at the hem, clinging just enough to catch the eye, and checked my phone. 9:58 p.m. He wasn't late, not yet, but the waiting always set my nerves on edge. His text had come through an hour ago, short and strange, room 9, 10 p.m. No questions. No name, no details, just a command wrapped in courtesy. I'd seen enough to know that meant something, secrets, maybe, or a man running from them. I stepped back inside, the door groaning shut, sealing me in with the stale air and the ghosts of nights I tried to forget. Room 9 was like every other stop on this road, peeling wallpaper with a faint palm tree pattern, a bed that sagged in the middle, and a lamp with a cracked shade casting a warm, golden haze over the room. The curtains were heavy, green, swaying slightly as the desert wind slipped through a gap in the window. A faint smell of cigarette smoke clung to everything, mixing with the musty scent of time. I sat on the edge of the bed, catching my reflection in the dusty mirror across the room. My auburn hair was pulled back, loose strands framing my face, and my hazel eyes looked back at me, sharp but tired, carrying stories I'd never share. Not even with you. I lit another cigarette, the match's flame dancing briefly before settling. The clock on the nightstand read 10:01. Waiting always brought the memories back, uninvited, like dust stirred by a passing car. I thought about my sister, Callie, her laugh bright as sunlight, telling me we'd leave Oklahoma together, chase a life bigger than our small town. I thought about the night she left without me, her car disappearing down a road I couldn't follow. I thought about the first time I worked this job, 22 and broke, promising myself it was just until I could afford a bus ticket west. That was 6 years ago, and the road had a way of keeping you longer than you planned. A knock at the door pulled me back, soft but deliberate, like someone who knew how to move through the world without being noticed. My heart skipped, not from fear but from something sharper, something alive. I stood, smoothing my dress, and opened the door, the hinges creaking like a warning. He stood there, framed by the neon moon's glow, his face half-shadowed. He was shorter than I'd expected, wiry, with a denim jacket worn thin at the elbows and hair the color of midnight, falling over his forehead in a way that made him look younger than he probably was. But his eyes, deep brown, almost black, like the desert at night, held a weight that made my breath catch. He didn't smile, didn't speak, just looked at me with an intensity that felt like it could unravel me. "You're June?" His voice was quiet, steady, with a faint drawl that spoke of places south of here. I nodded, stepping aside. You're on time. He glanced at the clock as he entered, his boots scuffing softly on the carpet. Habit. I closed the door, the latch clicking, and the room shrank, the air growing thick with something I couldn't name. He didn't sit, just stood by the window, his hands in his pockets, staring out at the neon sign as it flickered, its hum a low pulse in the quiet. I watched him, noting the tension in his shoulders, the way his fingers curled slightly, like they were holding on to something invisible. He wasn't like the others, no swagger, no easy charm, just a quiet that felt like it could swallow the room. Want a drink? I asked, nodding toward the bottle of bourbon on the dresser. It was cheap, but it did the job, loosening tongues and filling silences. He shook his head, his eyes still on the window. I'm good. I sat on the bed, crossing my legs, trying to read him. He was a mystery, and I wasn't sure I wanted to solve it. Mysteries were dangerous in my line of work, too many unknowns, too many ways to get hurt. I lit another cigarette, the smoke curling around me like a barrier. You got a name? I asked, knowing he wouldn't give it. He turned then, his eyes meeting mine, and for a moment, the world stopped. Call me Sam, he said, the name sounding like a lie, but one he'd chosen carefully. I raised an eyebrow, leaning back. Sam, huh? That's original. He smiled, just a twitch at the corner of his mouth, and it was enough to make my heart stumble. It'll do. We sat in silence for a while, the neon signs hum mixing with the distant rumble of a truck on the highway. I was used to silences, but this one was different, alive, heavy with things we weren't saying. I watched his hands, the way they stayed still in his pockets, like he was afraid to move them. I wondered what they'd held, what they'd let go. I wondered why I wanted to know. You're not what I expected, he said suddenly, his voice cutting through the quiet like a blade. I laughed, sharp and quick, the sound echoing in the small room. You don't know what to expect from me. Maybe. His eyes were on me now, steady, searching, like he was looking for something I didn't know I had. But you're not like this place. I wanted to argue, to tell him he was wrong, but his words had something deep, something I'd buried under years of motel rooms and late nights. I looked away, my throat tight, the cigarette burning low. You don't know anything about me. I know you're here, but you're not staying. His voice was soft, certain, like he'd seen the truth of me before I could. This road, it's not your home. I stood, needing to move, needing to shake off the way his words made me feel, seen, exposed, raw. I walked to the window, pulling the curtain aside, the neon light painting my skin in shades of green and gold. The desert stretched out beyond, vast and silent, like it was waiting for me to decide something. Why are you here, Sam? I asked, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. He didn't answer right away. When he did, his words were careful, like he was choosing them from a fragile stack. I'm looking for something. Thought I might find it here. I turned, leaning against the windowsill, studying him. That's not an answer. He smiled again, that small, fleeting thing that made my chest ache. It's all I've got. We talked as the night wore on, not about the big things, not about the truths that hung between us, but about the little ones that filled the gaps. He told me about a bar in Texas where the jukebox played Patsy Cline on repeat, about a sunrise he'd seen in Nevada that made him believe in something bigger than himself. I told him about the time I stole a slice of pie from a diner in Arizona, how I'd laughed until I cried when the cook chased me out. We laughed together, and it felt like a gift, like something I hadn't earned. His eyes softened when he looked at me, like he was seeing someone I'd forgotten how to be. Hours passed, the bourbon untouched, the bed a silent witness to a night that wasn't about what I'd expected. He didn't touch me, didn't try, but every glance, every pause, felt more intimate than any touch I'd known. I found myself imagining what it would be like to reach for his hand, to feel the roughness of his skin, to ask him to stay. But I didn't. That wasn't how this worked. As dawn crept through the curtains, painting the room in soft grays, he stood, pulling a small, folded envelope from his jacket. He held it out to me, his fingers brushing mine, warm and steady, sending a shiver through me I couldn't explain. "Take this," he said, his voice low, urgent. "Don't open it until you're ready." I took it, my heart racing. "What's in it?" He didn't answer, just looked at me, his eyes tracing my face like he was committing it to memory. Then he turned and walked out, the door clicking shut, leaving me with the hum of the neon sign and a weight in my hand I didn't understand. I stood there, clutching the envelope, my mind a storm of questions. Who was Sam? Why had he come? And what was in that envelope, burning against my palm like a secret I wasn't sure I could keep? The moonlit mirage faded into the distance, but that night stayed with me, sharp and unyielding, like a song I couldn't stop humming. I carried the envelope in my purse, its weight a constant reminder of Sam, of his eyes, his voice, the way he'd looked at me like I was more than the girl in room 9. I told myself I'd forget him, that he was just another drifter passing through, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw him, the curve of his jaw, the shadow of his smile, the way he'd stood so still, like he was afraid to break something. Weeks passed, and I kept moving, motel to motel, town to town, the endless stretch of Route 66 a map of my survival. I worked, I smiled, I played the part, but it felt different now, like I was acting in someone else's life. The men I met were the same, truckers, loners, men with secrets they didn't share, but none of them were him. None of them saw me the way he had, like I was a story worth reading. I started to wonder if I'd imagined him, if he was just a flicker of neon light, a mirage born from the desert and my own longing. It was early October when I saw him again, at a motel called the Dusty Trail, just outside Gallup. The air was crisp, the desert cooling as fall settled in, and the neon sign above the motel blinked in a lazy rhythm, casting a soft purple glow over the parking lot. I was outside, sitting on the hood of my old Ford, the metal cold against my thighs, smoking and watching the stars. The night was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you feel like you're the only person left in the world. I heard his footsteps before I saw him, the crunch of gravel like a heartbeat in the dark. He stepped into the light, same denim jacket, same dark hair falling over his eyes. He didn't look surprised to see me, like he'd known I'd be here, like the road had drawn us back together. "June," he said, my name soft and heavy, like it meant something to him. I slid off the hood, tossing my cigarette to the ground. "Sam." He smiled, that small, fleeting thing that made my heart ache. "You remembered. You're hard to forget." The words slipped out before I could stop them, and I looked away, embarrassed, the neon light painting my cheeks in shades of purple. He stepped closer, stopping just out of reach, his hands in his pockets. The light caught the lines on his face, deeper now, like the road had carved them there. "I didn't mean to find you again," he said, his voice low, almost lost in the wind. "But I'm glad I did." I laughed, sharp and unsteady. "You don't just find someone on this road. You were looking." "Maybe." His eyes met mine, and I felt that same pull, that same sense of being seen, like he could see the girl I'd been before the motels, before the nights that wore me down. Maybe I was. I wanted to ask him why, to demand answers, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I asked, "What do you want, Sam?" He didn't answer right away, just looked at me, his eyes dark and searching. "I want you to know you're more than this," he said finally, gesturing at the motel, the road, the life I'd been living. I want you to believe it." I turned away, staring at the highway, the lights of a passing car blurring into streaks. "You don't get to decide what I am." "I'm not deciding." His voice was closer now. And I realized he'd moved, standing just behind me, close enough that I could feel the warmth of him. "I'm just telling you what I see." I turned to face him, my heart pounding, and for a moment, we were all there was, the neon sign, the desert wind, the space between us alive with something I couldn't name. I wanted to reach for him, to bridge that gap, but I didn't. Instead, I pulled the envelope from my purse, holding it up. "What's this, Sam? Why'd you give it to me?" He looked at the envelope, his expression unreadable. "It's a choice," he said. "But you're not ready for it yet." I laughed, bitter and raw. "You don't know what I'm ready for." He stepped closer, his hand brushing mine, just for a second, and it was like a spark in the dark, lighting up every nerve in my body. "I know you're scared," he said softly. "I am too." Before I could respond, he pulled another envelope from his jacket, this one smaller, sealed with a piece of tape. He pressed it into my hand, his fingers lingering against mine, warm and steady. "Read this one first," he said. "Then decide what to do with the other." I looked down at the new envelope, my heart racing. "What's in it?" "Truth," he said simply, and then he was gone, disappearing into the shadows of the parking lot, leaving me with 2 envelopes and 1,000 questions. I stood there, the envelopes heavy in my hands, the neon sign buzzing above me. I didn't open them, not yet. I was afraid, not of him, but of what he might mean, of what he might ask of me. I sat on the hood of my car again, lighting another cigarette, the stars watching me like they knew something I didn't. The road stretched out before me, endless and uncertain, and I wondered if I'd ever find the courage to follow it. The Dusty Trail Motel was behind me now, but the envelope stayed with me, tucked in my purse like secrets I wasn't sure I wanted to keep. I drove west, the road unfolding under my tires, the neon signs blurring into memories. I couldn't shake Sam, his voice, his eyes, the way he'd made me feel like I was more than the sum of my nights. I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who danced with Callie in our backyard, dreaming of a life where we'd be free. I thought about the years since, the motels and the men, the way I'd learned to survive by burying that girl deep. Sam had seen her, somehow, and now he was asking me to find her again. I stopped at a motel called The Last Chance, just over the California line. The neon sign was broken, only half the letters glowing, casting a faint red light over the parking lot. I sat in my room, the envelopes on the nightstand, the lamp's light soft and warm, like a promise. The air smelled of dust and salt, the ocean not far now, its rhythm a faint pulse in the distance. I lit a cigarette, the smoke curling toward the ceiling, and stared at the envelopes, my heart pounding. I picked up the second one, the one he'd given me at the Dusty Trail. It was small, sealed, the tape peeling at the edges. I tore it open, my hands shaking, and pulled out a single sheet of paper, the handwriting neat but hurried, like he'd written it in a rush. June. My name's Sam, but you probably guessed that's not all of it. I've been running a long time, from a life I broke, from people I hurt. I saw you in room 9, and for the first time in years, I wanted to stop. You're not just a light in the dark, you're the kind of light that makes a man believe he can be better. I don't know if I'll ever be that man, but I need you to know you made me want to try. The other envelope holds the rest. It's not just my story, it's a chance for yours to change. But it's up to you. Sam. I read it again, my eyes burning, my chest tight. Sam. He'd seen me, really seen me, in a way no one else ever had. I set the letter down and reached for the first envelope, the one from that night at the Moonlit Mirage. It felt heavier now, like it carried the weight of both our lives. I opened it, my breath catching, and found a single sentence inside: "Meet me at the ocean, June. I'll be waiting where the road ends." Below it was an address, a pier in a town called Pacific's Edge, just a few hours away. I stared at it, my mind spinning. He was asking me to follow him, to leave this life behind, to take a chance on something I didn't understand. I thought about the road, the motels, the nights that had shaped me. I thought about Callie, how I'd lost her to the road, and how I'd lost myself along the way. And I thought about Sam, his quiet strength, the way he'd made me believe I could be more. I packed my bag that night, the envelopes tucked safely in my purse. The Ford's engine sputtered to life, and I drove west, the desert giving way to the ocean's salt and spray. The road felt different now, like it was leading me somewhere instead of just away. I thought about Sam every mile, his face sharper in my mind than the neon signs fading behind me. I thought about the life I was leaving, the weight of it falling away with every mile. Pacific's Edge was a quiet town, the kind of place where the ocean sang louder than the people. The address led me to a pier, weathered and gray, stretching out over the water like a hand reaching for something lost. I parked the Ford and walked to the end, the wind cold against my skin, the waves crashing below. I waited, my heart pounding, but he didn't come. I stood there for hours, the envelopes in my hands, the ocean stretching out before me, endless and unforgiving. I realized then that he wasn't coming, that he'd never been coming. Maybe he was still running, from whatever he'd been running from that first night. Maybe he was a dream, a story I'd told myself to keep going. But as the sun sank into the sea, painting the sky in shades of fire and ash, I felt something shift inside me. I'd come here because of him, but I'd stay for me. I opened the first envelope again, reading his words one last time: "Meet me at the ocean, June. I'll be waiting where the road ends." I folded it carefully and let it go, watching it flutter into the waves, carried away by the tide. The second letter I kept, tucking it into my purse, a reminder of the girl I was finding again. I don't know if I'll ever see Sam again. I don't know if he was real, or if he was just a mirror, showing me the parts of myself I'd forgotten. But I'm here, at the end of Route 66, and for the first time in years, I feel like I'm free. The road brought me to him, and he brought me to myself. And maybe that's enough.